What is good, you lovely folks of YouTube? Thank you so much for tuning into this video. This is my second podcast with Zain bhai. Hello.
Hi.
This one is about racetracks.
Yeah.
In this, we'll try to cover everything you need to know about going to a racetrack in India. As a motorcyclist, it has always been a dream to ride on the track or maybe even race a bit. I don't know if or when that will happen, but that is something that has always fascinated me. So we'll talk about that, and I don't think there's much information available on the internet about racetracks. So we'll try to cover those topics in this podcast.
Yep.
So let's get started without wasting any time. Why should any rider go to a racetrack?
To upskill themselves, make themselves better riders. Doesn't matter where you want to ride, how you want to ride. As long as you're riding a motorcycle on tarmac, you should go to a racetrack.
And what are some benefits that someone might see after their first track day?
So any of the benefits that you can imagine that would come from becoming a better rider depends on what your goal is. If you want to become a faster rider, well, that is something you will definitely notice. But the biggest difference that I have noticed in myself and in a lot of riders that I take to the racetrack is they become a lot more safer on the road, which is my primary objective of taking people to the racetrack.
Okay.
To make them safer on the road. Today it's a super bike is accessible to people, right? Because in the second hand market, a lot of fast motorcycles are available for not a lot of money. But riders who are riding these motorcycles need to have the skill to control them at those speeds, which makes them safer, which reduces the number of people who are dying on the road. That would be my primary objective, make yourself safer on the road. And coincidentally, what happens is once you are safer on the road, you naturally become faster. Because you are safe, you get more confident, and once you are more confident, you naturally become faster.
Yes.
Right?
Your limit is pushed a lot further, so you can ride faster and still be safer.
Yeah.
What are some misconceptions that the average Joe might have about the racetrack?
It's only for racing. Biggest misconception. That if someone is going to a racetrack, it is only for racing purposes. Not at all true. We use the racetrack in this country as a safe environment because we have no other safe environment. Internationally, people have parking lots and they can even have patches of road which are free of traffic, right? But our country is very densely populated, as you might know, right? So for us, having a safe, controlled environment is not accessible. And that is only a racetrack. It is a very controlled, very safe environment with the right medical facilities available right there.
With the right people around you.
With the right people around you. So that is the perfect place for you to train and become a better rider.
The perfect place to train is not the streets, where if someone guys is a hole deta hai, फिर तुम उसके पीछे फिर चालू होता है, that is not safe. That is something we would not recommend. Never twist the throttle with your ego. Does that happen at the track often?
It does not often, but it does happen sometimes that people tend to twist their throttle with their egos. Does tend to happen, but it's a very, very rare case scenario.
And I'm sure that if it does happen, there's people to regulate that kind of behavior.
Absolutely.
रास्ते में on the roads there's nothing of that nature. कोई कैसे भी कट मारे कुछ भी करे, there's nothing anyone can do about it. Would you recommend going to a school once you go to a racetrack? If yes, then what are the schools that we have as options in India? And what kind of a rider should opt for what kind of a schools that we have over here? So just give us a brief about schools that we have here in India.
There are riding schools in the country that make you better riders. They have been in the country for a decent amount of time. Over time, a lot more schools have come up. The oldest school in the country is run by Indie Motard based out of Bangalore. Their school is called TWO, Throttle Wide Open.
Okay.
They focus on safety and they focus on road riding. They say we are at the racetrack only because it's a safe environment. Their school focuses on making people safer on the road.
Okay.
So that's their pro. The other schools are RACR, which is Rajni's Academy of Competitive Racing.
Okay.
Rajni is Rajni Krishnan. People don't know, just Google him. He's called the Valentino Rossi of India. And as the name suggests, Rajni's Academy of Competitive Racing. So that school focuses a lot more on racing at the racetrack. Then there are other schools like Apex, CRA, ISBK, and these schools fall somewhere between the two extremes of Indy Motard and RACR. But yeah, you have a bunch of these schools that are there in the country. Anyone who wants to learn riding better has to attend a school. Now, depending on what you want to do, if you want to become a racer, you might as well go to RACR. If you want to only ride on the road and only want to become safer on the road and want to be a better rider on your tours or journeys or weekend rides, you can consider Indy Motard as an option.
Okay.
Any of these schools are going to make a drastic difference to the way you ride your motorcycle. It is going to be an eye opener, and this is unanimously agreed by everyone that I have taken to, including myself. Right? It is a no-brainer. Absolutely. It is an expense, but it is a no-brainer for you to go and do this school.
Yes. Safety is very important because, of course, if you are alive, that's the only way you can ride your motorcycle. And yes, these are expensive. These schools are expensive, but I think they're worth it because they make you safer on the road and they make you a better rider. And I feel like there's no joy in riding a bike unless you can do it well.
Yeah.
If you're doing it, if you're just doing a shitty job of riding a bike, then it's not going to be fun.
Well, you can. Let's not offend the YouTube public. You can obviously train yourself, skill yourself as well, and the only difference is you will probably spend a year trying to learn the skills that you will do over a weekend at the racetrack. Right? So imagine you're spending a year trying to get those skills which you could have done in a weekend and then used those skills on the road for that whole year and made yourself even better.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So schools is something which everyone should consider, and I am very vocal about this. Anyone who has come to my workshop knows that I am very vocal about, if you have a big motorcycle, come to the racetrack.
What are the racetracks that we have as options here in India?
As of now, 3 in the country. You've got Budh International Circuit in Delhi, which is the Formula 1 racetrack.
Yep.
You've got Madras International Circuit based in Chennai, previously known as Madras Motor Racetrack, MMRT. And then you've got Curry Speedway in Coimbatore. These are the only 3 in the country as of now and have been for the longest amount of time. There are more upcoming projects. There are always news about new racetracks being built around the country. Bangalore, Coimbatore, I think one between Pune and Mumbai as well. When they will build, we don't know. But as of now, there are 3 in the country.
So, what are the differences between all 3 of these tracks?
So, Kari is the smallest racetrack in terms of length and the pit area that you have. Still a decent track, very good for mid range motorcycles like KTMs. You've got BIC on the other end of the spectrum, which is a Formula 1 regulated racetrack. So definitely the longest racetrack in the country.
It's also much wider compared to these, right?
Because it's a car track, right? It's supposed to house Formula 1 cars. So it's definitely a much wider racetrack with much better facilities and much more safety.
Cost more, I'm assuming.
Equipment. No, absolutely. Yeah. Right. And Madras International Circuit falls somewhere in between. It's longer than Curry, but not as big as BIC, and the facilities stand somewhere in between. It is the most widely used track for sure because it offers the most value for money.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, those are your 3 in the country.
And this is Zain Bhai's Triumph Daytona 675R. Yep. This is his track bike. He only uses it on the track.
Yep.
Nowhere on the streets.
Nope.
Is that
I have used it on the street. Once I start taking it to the racetrack, since a decent amount of time I've stopped it. I think the last ride I did on this would be pre-COVID.
Wow. Yeah. Is that what racetracks did to you? Stop riding on the streets?
Absolutely. Like my experience with the motorcycle became so good on the racetrack that no matter how I would ride on the road, it would never be satisfying.
Yep.
Because I could do so much more on the racetrack with the motorcycle, and then riding on the road increases kilometers on the bike, adds to my maintenance cost for not a lot of satisfaction. So it made no sense to me. So once I got regular on the racetrack and I knew that I would be doing this at least twice a year, riding on the road just does not excite me, especially on this motorcycle.
Fair enough. And I don't think super sport bikes are meant for Indian roads at all.
Indian roads are not meant for super sport bikes.
You would be able to extract maybe 5% of the horsepower and all of that out of it safely on the streets. You'll be able to use maybe 3% in the city, not more than that.
Safely, yeah. I
Safely.
mean, people extract a lot more and they put themselves in a big danger spot when they do that. And I am not saying that, you shouldn't. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't understand why people do it, right? For the longest amount of time, I used to do it previously, right? But then I realized something, that the way I am designed to ride a motorcycle, I cannot ride it slow. If I ride it on the road, I know the performance it has. At some point, I am going to be like, come on, let's ride, let's push the motorcycle a little bit.
There's a squid inside every single one of us.
Yeah, and that enthusiasm takes over you, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that at the age that I am, at the mentality that I am, I'll not be able to ride this motorcycle, which fits like a glove to me, slowly on the road. And once that is going to happen, I'm not going to be safer on the road. So the only way for me to be safe on the road on this motorcycle is not ride it. It's a sad conclusion, but I make up for it when I go to the racetrack.
Fair enough. So what are the minimum costs involved with riding on a racetrack?
So we fall in the worst possible category on the...
And I mean minimum, because I don't have a very big bank balance, and I'm sure most of the viewers don't either. So what's the minimum amount of money that we can spend on just to have a track weekend?
So we are in the worst possible scenario because we are equidistant from the two tracks in the country which are accessible, which is...
Us being people from Mumbai.
From Mumbai, yes. So Delhi and Chennai and Coimbatore are equally apart from us, 1500 kilometers here and some similarly on that side as well. So whichever track you decide to go to, it's going to be a big travel expense. One, Coimbatore is going to be the cheapest track since it's the smallest. If you want to have a training session or a riding session on the racetrack, then Coimbatore is going to be your most economical one. If we talk about the best possible bang for buck you can get, then it is one of these trainings organized by some of the manufacturers. So TVS does this.
Yep.
Honda used to do this. I don't know if they still do it. Now KTM has started their whole RC Cup and track day experiences and all of that. But the TVS experience out of all of them is by far the best. It does not cost.
So how can the average Joe go for an experience like that? They'll have to have a TVS.
You follow your TVS social media channels and they keep putting up whenever they do. I think they do it 2 or 3 times.
So are these
maximum
races or are these schools? Or?
These are schools.
Okay.
The races are completely different.
Okay.
They do that also, but the races are completely different. These are schools that they train their TVS owners, right? It's not expensive. It is about 8 to 10,000 for a day for them to train. Yeah.
But you have to have a TVS. Is that the requirement?
Yes.
Okay.
There are loopholes around that, like most things in the country. So, right. So, there are 8 to 10,000 for the day. The only other expense is for you to travel and stay because we are from Mumbai. Right? If you are based in Chennai, which is where they organize this, by the way, if you are based in Chennai, it's no cost for you. But that's for a day.
Yep.
Right? That's what they charge. If you want a much deeper, much better experience, and if you have to take your own motorcycle, then it's a much bigger expense. They provide you motorcycles in that training as well. Right? But now if you want to have a better experience, and let's say that, I have an RC390, I want to ride on the racetrack on my motorcycle, then you cannot go to TVS or you cannot go to Honda.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Then you have to go to other schools which are non OEM. They are much more expensive than going to these OEM schools.
Okay.
Right? Because the OEM schools do it as a marketing strategy. So they cover a lot of the cost, whereas the other schools have to bear all the cost, and that's what gets translated to the end consumer. If you're going to something like MMRT from Mumbai, your overall expenses will range from 60 to 75,000 for the whole experience, including your flight tickets, hotel stay, transport, bike transport, fuel cost, everything that you can think of. That's what the big ballpark number is. If you want to take your own motorcycle to the racetrack and ride it or train for it for a couple of days.
And if you're someone that owns a big bike that can afford a 1000cc liter class super sport, this is nothing for you. This is nothing. So then it's very much worth the experience. Are there any minimum requirements to go on the racetrack?
We are only going to talk about the aftermarket, like the non-OEM schools.
Yep.
So the non-OEM schools, your basic requirements is you need to have a motorcycle, you need to have the riding gear, right? Riding gear.
Riding gear would be?
We'll get into that. And you need to have the basic skills of riding a motorcycle. They are not going to teach you how to ride a motorcycle, and you need to have a driving license, obviously. Once you have those three things, you can go to the racetrack and get yourself trained.
Okay.
Once we come to riding gear, you need a full face helmet, you need a full one-piece leather suit, full gloves, full boots.
Okay.
Those are your requirements. If you don't have them, if you don't own them, there are a lot of places in the country now which offer them on rent.
So you'll be able to find them around the racetrack?
No, you have to pre-plan them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there any references that you can give out?
Well, if you do plan to do that, then at that particular time we will have to look at what vendor works best for you. There are a few places, but based on your body type and what size will fit you, because a one-piece suit has a particular size. So what size will fit you, will have to find a suit for you. We at our workshop keep a couple of suits with us for the racetrack for people to rent out. Just like there are other places in Chennai, in Bangalore who do the same, right? So depending on, and we are all connected. So depending on who has the right size suit for you, right? Then that can be planned.
How much would the rent on that cost for a day? Or
a suit is about 5,000 rupees for 2 days, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Again, all of this is all right compared to the experience that you'll ultimately have on the track, and
that is included in the big number that I mentioned.
Right.
So 60 to 75,000, that includes this.
Okay. So अगर leather suit वगैरह नहीं है तो वो सब भी उसका बंदोबस्त हो जाता है. And if any one of you are seriously planning on going to the racetrack, then I'm sure Zain bhai will be
absolutely. I take a lot of people to the racetrack, and the more the merrier.
Yes. So he has an Instagram and a YouTube channel. I'll link them both down in the description, and they'll be on the screen somewhere. So if there's any questions, any burning questions that you have about the racetrack, you can just feel free to ask Zain bhai. He's the man to ask. But that's about the only requirements you have.
Absolutely.
You don't need. So do they do an inspection on the motorcycles, the brake pads, the tires, chain, all of that?
Ideally, they should, and I think with time that is going to happen. As of now, they don't. But with time, I think it's just going to come up to that standard where that is going to be a minimum requirement. The whole point comes down to this: if they start doing it, it's going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
Right? So they want to keep it affordable. See, if they want to do it, then they will have to have a scrutiny center where people are constantly checking motorcycles. At one point, there are about 60, 70 odd motorcycles on the track. So making sure all of the motorcycle is scrutinized will take about 4-5 hours. Right? That takes away track time. If it does not take away track time, it's going to add man hours who are going to work. So that cost has to come from somewhere. It's going to get more expensive. So unless and until it is forced upon, they'll try to avoid it for us to have a cheaper option on a track day, right? Be more affordable that way. But I think eventually it is going to catch up. As of now, no, unless you come in with a motorcycle which is in such a bad shape that it is visually noticeable. That if you ride on the track, you are going to have a fall, or someone else is going to be in danger because of you. Unless that is the scenario, there's no checks as such.
How do you prep your bike for a track day?
Different riders prep it in a different way depending on what sort of a level you are riding at the racetrack. I will talk about people who are going to the racetrack for the first time, people who are going to be trained for the first time in a school. The first time you go to a racetrack, nothing matters. Just make sure your bike is maintained properly. Take your motorcycle as you would ride it on the road.
Okay.
So that your skills are replicable on the road. Right? Just take it as it is.
So no slick tires the first time you go to the racetrack.
Oh, no slick tires the 7th time you go to the racetrack. Please.
Let's talk about slicks a bit after this, because I'm very interested in.
We'll do that. So make sure that So a lot of people, what I do for a lot of people is we take the mirrors off, we take the indicators off, we take anything that if in case you have a fall might break, right? And it is not needed on the racetrack, we tend to take that off. Obviously, if you have some protection on your motorcycle, like fork sliders and frame sliders, and those things are a bit helpful.
Yeah, you want to have them on.
Yeah. A little bit, not that much, but for level 1, for your first track day experience, it's not going to matter that much.
I'm sure it is the case that the motorcycle wears out a lot quicker on the racetrack. So is it recommended to change the oil before you go on the track? Because maybe let's say it's halfway through its life. So would you recommend changing it before the track day itself? I think I would do that, since it will be under so much stress.
So for people who are going for the first time, you are not going to be pushing your motorcycle at all. The trainers are not going to let you push your motorcycle. They are going to be there to teach you the right skills that you need to push your motorcycle before you push your motorcycle, right? So the first 2 days that you are on the racetrack, it won't matter that much. You make sure your maintenance schedule is, or your maintenance of your motorcycle is as per schedule, and that should take care of everything else. The first time, just don't make it more difficult on yourself by adding expense, right? Just get to the racetrack. Once you start doing it more frequently, and once you start upping your pace a little bit and you start really pushing your motorcycles, then we start to consider, okay, how do we change the motorcycle? But for the first time, just don't think about all of this. Just make sure your bike is in good running order. Obviously, that is vital.
Yep.
The worst thing that can happen to you is you spend all of this money, go to the racetrack, and the bike does not work.
Yep.
Right? So just make sure your bike is in perfect running order.
So visit Zain bhai before you go to the racetrack. He'll make
Yeah.
your bike.
Yeah,
as
we'll
quick as it
definitely
can
do
be.
that.
So what is it like riding on slicks?
So I did about 7 track days.
How many track days have you been on so far?
I think about 11.
Oh.
11 or 12, I think so. A few of them have been 3-day track days, so that adds to your mileage. But you can consider it this way, that this motorcycle has covered at least 10-12,000 kilometers with me on it on the racetrack. So that should give you a rough idea of how much I've ridden on the racetrack, because that number in track terms is huge.
Goal.
Yeah, so we cover about 200 kilometers a day on the racetrack. That's it. That would mean a lot of days that have gone into it, right? So I did about 7 or 8 track days before I moved on to Super Corsas, which are your maximum grip performance tire that you can have for the road. I did 1 track day on them, and then I moved to slicks because slicks were cheaper than Super Corsas. The difference between a road tire and a Super Corsa and a slick is...
So how much would a road tire cost, a Super Corsa and a slick?
So a road tire, if you
For
assume...
the Triumph, let's say.
So if you assume a good tire, your road tire starts with your Apollo Werdesteins. They start around the 25-ish range for this, somewhere around that ballpark. Then you go to the Pirellis, the Rossos. The Rosso 3s are in the low 30s. The Rosso 4 is in the high 30s. Super Corsa SC2 is in the mid 50s as a set. And the slicks, depending on which you get. If you get the Pirelli slick, they are in the low 60s. And if you get the Michelin or the Metzeler slicks, they are in the high 40s.
Okay.
So that's what the range of cost is for tires. The performance difference, and it is much more expensive once you factor in how long they last.
Got it.
So my last set of slicks will do me another track day. That's it. I put them on before my last track day. They'll do me another maybe half a track day, and that's it. They're done.
So like 3-4 track days.
That's it.
Of hard riding, then they're done.
They're done.
Okay.
Compared to a road tire, if I put a Rosso 4, I'll easily be able to do three track days on it plus road miles on it. Right? So that's what that is.
So as you were saying, the experience of riding on slicks.
Oh, it's it allows you to see. First of all, I would like to mention that it is not for everybody. If you are having a slick tire on your motorcycle, they are very sensitive to temperature. Okay. If they are not in the right temperature window, they are not going to work at all. It's one thing getting them up to temperature, which can be done with tire warmers, but it's another thing to maintain those temperatures. If you are not riding a certain pace, if you are not riding a certain speed, you are not going to put in enough energy in those tires to maintain the temperature which is required for them to work, which means they will cool off, then they will cool off more, and then they'll cool off more, and then they're going to stop giving you any grip at all. It's going to be like riding on rails.
Wow.
Right? So that is one, but if you can maintain them in the right temperature window, the experience is surreal. It's bar none, because compared to a road tire, the slick allows you to push the motorcycle to one, a higher extent, but two, they are very forgiving. If you make a mistake, it is very easy for you to correct that mistake and not have a fall on a slick than you do on a road tire. But that's why I mentioned that disclaimer before. Don't listen to this and go and buy a slick tomorrow, right? It's not for everybody. You build yourself up for that, and which is why I mentioned I did 7-8 track days before I moved on to Super Corsas, let alone slicks. They are expensive as well. If you're not going to put that pace, you're just wasting money on it.
Yep.
Right? So that's what that is.
So I hope. So I really hope that this podcast answered all your basic questions about your first track day. If there's any more questions, please leave them down in the comment section below. Me or Zain bhai, I'm not going to answer them because I don't have any experience whatsoever. But Zain bhai will reply from his YouTube channel, and we'll try our best to help you out.
Yep.
And that's about it. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks a lot for watching it till here. Done?
Done.